Hey everyone, welcome back to Bodyhaven Soaps. My name is Darlene. I am the owner and creator of Bodyhaven Soaps. And today's video we are going to go over making my Bath Truffles. Bath Truffles, sometimes people call them bath melts. I do have another product that I do as a bath melt, but they're more of just a butter or oil substance that is highly moisturizing for in the bathtub. These are my Bath Truffles, which I have baking soda, citric acid, a little bit of SLSA in it, and a very high concentration of those oils and butters that are just absolutely skin loving, and they make your skin so soft when you get out of the tub. It's one of my favorite products that I make. So I figured it would be a good video to start off 2023 with you guys. So that's what we're going to go over today. So before we get started, Happy New Year's to everybody, and I send out the best wishes to everybody in 2023. Let's hope for the best year ever, okay? So let's get started. Okay guys, so Bath Truffles is the recipe that I'm going to share with you guys today. I have all the ingredients already measured out for you guys just to save time so you guys aren't watching me weigh everything out. You guys know how to do that. And I do use my stand mixer for this. You can absolutely do this by hand. It's just a little bit more work to get everything worked together and make sure we don't have those lumps and stuff. Now, baking soda would be the first ingredient that I'm going to put in. If you are not using a mixer, I suggest running it through a sieve just to make sure you get all these lumps out so you don't have white specks all through there. Not that it hurts anything, it just looks more uniformed and professional if it's all blended really well. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add this baking soda into my bowl. Okay, so I'm going to use my stand mixer, and I just have the little paddle thing that I use to mix it. Okay, everything is sanitized and cleaned, wiped down with rubbing alcohol, and allowed to air dry. So the first thing we're going to put in is going to be our baking soda. Okay, and for the amount of baking soda, it is going to be 1,446 grams of baking soda. This does make a fairly large batch. You may see, I don't know if you guys can see all the dust coming up from that. But it's a good idea to wear a mask when you're working with all of these, especially if you're in a confined space, because you are inhaling all of this, and it's really not meant to inhale this stuff, okay? So we're going to put the baking soda into the mixing bowl. Now, the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bloom my dye to color this. So we are going to make, I'm going to use the dupe fragrance Love Spell. Okay, I bought this at Voyager Soaps. And I'm going to make it kind of a reddy color. So we're using Raspberry Delight water-soluble dye, and I get this from Breaking the Mold. Okay, I use the water-soluble dyes I get from Breaking the Mold are pretty good, and also the water-soluble dyes that I get from Fizz Fairy. Those are my two favorite places to buy here in Canada. So that's what I'm going to use. So in here, you guys, I don't really measure out the amount of water I use, but I'm going to use some distilled water. And I'm going to just heat it up for a second and bloom my dye in there. Okay, so I just warmed this up for 10 seconds in the microwave. You just need to get it a little bit warm so that the dye starts to dissolve and make that beautiful color. I don't know, probably about so much. I don't really measure my dye. I just eyeball it to see what color I like. I can add some more if I like, but I just look for that desired color. I mean, obviously you don't want to put a whole bunch in there. But this will look really nice in the bath water, and these are meant to go into a bathtub full of water, so it's going to make a nice color in the tub without being too much. So I have the dye dispersed in there. Grab a paper towel here so I don't get dye everywhere. Okay, and we're going to put this on the mixer and dump the dye in there. Okay, so I now have this dish on the mixer here. I'm just going to get my paddle put in here. And I like to put the dye in first with the distilled water and let that water start to mix into the baking soda and disperse, so that when I put the citric acid in, I don't lose any of that citric acid reaction with the baking soda. So I'm just gonna put this dye in. And turn it on. Okay, so while I let this disperse into the baking soda and allow the coloring and the water to disperse through the baking soda, I am going to start melting down my oils that I need. So in this bowl, I'm going to get my butters beginning to melt down. So in the bowl for the butters that we're going to use, as I said, we use a fairly high concentration of butter. We want these to really soften the skin and just be very luxurious bath products. So I am using a large amount of shea butter. For the shea butter, we are going to use 174 grams of shea butter. Okay, and then a large amount of cocoa butter. Now you can use the unrefined cocoa butter, you can use the unrefined wafers, you can use whatever kind of cocoa butter you want. You can change this soft, the butters, like the shea butter, you could use mango butter, you could do a combination of shea butter, mango butter. I mean, you're kind of unlimited to your options here. You guys have seen my previous video where we did infused butters. You could absolutely use some of that. You want to use a nice hard oil so these firm up. So I choose to use the cocoa butter because they will melt in the bathtub. But you can use other butters that are hard as well. The option is yours. You're going to have to play with the ratios a bit to make sure they firm up properly. But I use the cocoa wafers. And I do have unrefined here because that's what I could get. And I have 145 grams of cocoa wafers here. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I am just going to let this begin to melt. While this is melting, I'm going to let the dye and everything mix really well in here. And then I'll bring you guys back. Okay, so we've got this all mixed up and you can see, you know, the nice color that this has become. It will get a little bit darker as we add in our butters and stuff. It will darken that color up, so I don't get it too dark to start off with. All right, so now we have all of our added ingredients to put in here. So this has got our baking soda and our colorant with a little bit of water to disperse that through there. All right, I have my butters melted down, my cocoa butter and my shea butter that are ready to go right here. And I just continued stirring it until all those wafers melted. I didn't get it extremely too warm because I didn't want to break down the properties of the shea butter, so that's something to keep in mind. Okay, so now we're going to add in the rest of our ingredients. So we are going to add in our cream of tartar. And we want these to firm up really nicely and hold their shape. They are fairly delicate still even once they're dry. So we use cream of tartar in here to help do that. And we have 58 grams of cream of tartar that I'm going to put in here. Okay. And then we have our SLSA. So I put a little bit of SLSA in here to give it some foaming action and things like that. It's a light surfactant, so it's really non-irritating to the skin. I don't really have too many issues with using this surfactant. And we are going to use 87 grams of the SLSA surfactant. This is a coarse SLSA, so it's not as powdery. You've seen how quick I dumped that in there. If you are getting the fine SLSA, just remember that you should be wearing a mask. It's very irritating to the lungs, and it's very air light, so it will create a lot of dust on you. So keep that in mind. All right. And then we add in kaolin clay. You know, I love my clays, and I add them to a lot of the things that I make. And this really helps. I use these in my this in my bath bombs and everything. It really makes the skin feel very good in the bath water. All right, so 14.5 grams of the kaolin clay, and we're just gonna put that in there. And before I add in all my oils and things like that, I want to get this dispersed out. Otherwise, the oil will create lumps in this. We want it to make sure that it is dispersed throughout the mixture and evenly distributed. So that really just helps with lumps and stuff in our mixture. We want to make sure that we're not having all those white lumps and stuff in there. At least that's, I prefer mine not to have that in there. Not that it's the end of the world. All right, and now we're going to add in some of our liquids. So in here I have polysorbate 80. Now remember that this has quite a high concentration of these melted down cocoa butter and shea butter. So this can make the surface of the tub very slippery. We actually want this oil to disperse into the water so that it can absorb into the skin. So we use polysorbate 80. And I use a fair little bit in there to help with the dispersion. However, these go into a full bathtub, so the percentage is very low. All right, so we are going to use 29 grams of the polysorbate 80. I'm just going to use my little spatula here to get it all out of the container. So we got our polysorbate 80 in there. We got 29 grams. And then we have our vegetable glycerin, which is a humectant and helps attract moisture to the skin and really just boosts the moisturizing properties of these bath truffles. And we have 29 grams of the vegetable glycerin. We're going to pour that in there. And then I also have my fragrance, and like I said, it's a Love Spell dupe, and I purchased it from Voyager Soap, and I have 21.75 grams, it's 1%, of the fragrance oil. Okay, and then we will give this a mix and get this dispersed through. Okay, and now that we have all of that mixed in there, we are going to add in our oil. So this is the shea and the cocoa butter that was melted down. Just scrape out that bowl. Okay, and we will mix this up again. Okay, so as you can see, as I said, the color is going to deepen. This is very wet, okay, very oily, pasty. That's what we want. It kind of like that, I don't know, kinetic sand. If you've ever had anything to do with that, that's kind of what it feels like to me. And now all we have to do is add in our citric acid. So for our citric acid, you guys, I have 345.75 grams of the citric acid, and we are going to pour this all in and mix that in, and then we are ready to scoop these out. Okay, so that is all well combined in there. You can see kind of what it looks like it has that Play-Doh texture to it or kinetic sand texture to it. That is what we are looking for. I'm going to get all of this off of my beater, and then I will get the trays and show you how I scoop these. There's many different ways that you could do this. You could press these into a mold and allow them to dry. I prefer not to use a mold because it takes so long for them to dry. 2 to 3 days is how long I would let these dry. I do run a dehumidifier in my soap room just because our humidity level can be high at times. It's really just going to depend on the weather, but I do use that on a regular basis for my drying and curing of things. Okay, so I have my trays all set up. I have a few of them here lined with parchment paper so it doesn't stick. And I use a little scoop. Now I put these into a package of 5 or 6 depending on what packages I'm doing. And they're just individual little ones that you can drop 1, 2. You could put all the package of 5 in. It's all relevant. You could use a big ice cream scoop and make it just a big one. As I said, you could press this into a mold. This stuff here you could absolutely press with your hands if that's what you had. It's pretty easy to deal with stuff. But for me, I just use the small ice cream scoop because of the way I package my stuff. I make sure that the ice cream scoop is full and I just press them up. Okay, so that is how easy it is. You can see how many I've made. This will give me about 18 packages, one batch. I put about 5 of these in each. Some of my gift packages that I do 6 in the bag. It's just a little different packaging so I can fit 6 in there. But the ones that I just package as individual purchases, I just do 5 in a package. And as I said, one of my favorite, I enjoy having a nice hot bath. This would be my favorite treat to put in a bath. So even if you just want to make these for yourselves, you should give these a try. You can downsize the recipe if you don't want to make as big of a batch. Remember, you are using high amounts of butters and oil, or butters and cocoa butter and shea butter in this. So the shelf life is really going to depend on those butters. Because we're not using a preservative or anything, we're going to allow these to dry so there's no moisture in it, but oil still goes rancid over time. But I mean, if you look at shea and cocoa butter, they got an average of 2-year shelf life. So like I've explained in my previous shelf life videos, just know the quality of your butters, the manufacturer's date, so that you can determine how long. And with something like this, I would make sure I use the newest butters that I have, okay? So that's how simple this is. I will let these dry for 3 days and then I will package them. But hopefully you enjoyed this video and you guys give these a try. Thanks again for watching, and you guys have a great day.